Okay. Thank you for the introduction, Clive. Thank you for everyone being on the call. Thank you for everyone being present. I appreciate it. I just first want to say that I'm not here to pitch. I'm not here to not here to promote business, and none of those things. I'm purely here just to enlighten you. Yeah, if there's anything you guys want to know about this sector of care provision, supported housing, supported living, and how it works with property, then I'd like to think with the experience that I've gained over the years, I can shed some light for you guys and help you with your progression of your own businesses and portfolios and stuff. So I just want you to get that across. I'm not here to pitch. Yeah. Just to correct you, Clive, I do have a care provider. I own a children's leaving care business. I've got 9 residential care homes. I look after kids between the ages of 16 and 18, and at any one given time, I've got about 43 kids in care. That is one of my businesses, and I have a couple of other things going on that are property developments and refurbishments and stuff like that. So if I just open up maybe with just some very, very high level information, and then that might prompt anybody to ask questions, and I think maybe if we do like a Q&A, I think that might be the best way to go with it, so that we'll get straight into it. So the social housing sector, and let's call it social housing, yeah, it's worth about £36 billion per annum. Okay, and how that money is attributed is through housing benefit payments and care payments to support people in our communities. Now, I don't know how many units or properties that relates to, but that is the amount of money that the DWP, which is the Department of Welfare and Pensions, pays annually to support people in our communities. And the people that I can talk about today that we generally support are a full range of people. So it can be people with severe mental health problems that are in secure units, right down to people that are just jobless, falling on hard times, that need some support for a couple of years, want to get their feet back on the floor, to children that suffer autism, care leavers, LD, which is learning difficulties, domestic violence, single mums with babies. So there's a whole cohort of people that are supported from that annual budget, and those figures and that budget is an ever increasing budget. Yeah, it's not getting better. Yeah, there are tens and tens of thousands of people that are on housing waiting lists. There are, in the sector that I work in, to give you an idea, there's 80,000 children that transition from residential care homes into supported accommodation between the ages of 16 and 18, and that's a year. And there isn't enough housing, and local authorities really do struggle. So there is a business model there that works, and if the right people are involved in it and the right what we call stakeholders, then it works. It can have a lot of social impact benefits for landlords, investors, and also secure income for them. But it also provides much needed roof over lots of needed people and supporting our local communities. So I hope that might trigger a load of questions, and if it doesn't, fine. If it does, I'm here to help. So shall I open it up?
Yes. Just raise your hand either by in the normal way. Firstly, yes, Mark, thank you for that clarification. I knew you had houses with tenants in. I didn't realise that you were actually a registered care provider yourself. I perhaps forgot that, and I thought you just provided the houses. But anyway, that's just a clarification, but thanks for that. Adrian, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, thanks. I'm going to try and keep it to short questions, because obviously there's quite a lot of people here. So I guess, is there a, I don't know, what do I say? Is there a specific, how to get on the first step of this journey? Because I think it's quite altruistic. I think it's something I've been looking into is HMOS supported living for veterans. But yeah, what's I don't know, what's the first step other than, oh, look, I've got a HMO, what does it need? Do you need to be thinking of the specific market segment? How do you get on about pairing property with organisation? Maybe if you can talk us around that, Mark, please.
Sure. Okay. So first of all, it's driven by need. Yeah. So where is the need? What is the need? And what is the support for the need? Yeah. Now, you mentioned veterans. Yeah. That is a sector that is has a lot of budget allocated to it. And it's also a sector where there is a lot of need. What I found in that is quite location specific. Yeah. So out in the sticks, not so much, but near the big towns and the cities, yes, very much so. So there's about 3 or 4 components. So the main driver is the need, okay, and then it's around the stakeholders. So do we have local authority engagement and support? Do we have a care provider or support provider that will do the services? And do we have a property? And do we have a like-minded landlord? Yeah, and if we've got all those components, then it's just a case of making it all work.
How do you go about I don't know finding that? I guess is it in that journey, notwithstanding the property, is it the care provider relationship that comes first, and how to connect with them and find out what their needs are, and how do you? Yeah.
Well, if we kind of accept that in all the major cities and towns we have needs, yeah. So that's that box ticked. Yeah. If we accept that they're all going to need quality provision, stroke housing. Yeah. If that box can get ticked and some properties can be sourced, yeah, then engaging a local authority subject to risk assessments and locality assessments, then you've ticked all the boxes. I think if it's something that you haven't done before and it's something that you're serious about, then I think it's a case of identifying an area where you would want to work. So i.e. Pick a local authority. So let's say it's Wigan, for example, which is just outside of Manchester. So I would then, I know there's a need. I would engage with somebody like myself or the local authority and ask them what needs they've got, what provision that they're looking for, and then go searching for some properties. Yeah.
Okay.
There's one missing piece there, though, isn't there, Mark? You're talking about Wigan. You've ascertained from the local authority there's a need for a certain category of tenant. You found some properties, but do you not then need a care provider unless you're intending to register yourself as a care provider and run the properties? How do you go and find a care provider such as Serco or because they're the only name I know, it's just a familiar name. How do you go to them and bring them into the third piece of the human piece between you, the care provider, and the local authority?
So that comes down from your contacts, yeah, and networking, yeah. I have a lot of contacts across a lot of local authorities, so I can, and I work in that sector, so I'm in it 24 hours a day, so I kind of know who operates in and around Greater Manchester and other locations. So if somebody came to me and said, Mark, I've got a property, it's C2, which is residential care home. It's in the city, it's in central Manchester, and can you find me a provider on it? Then within 2 phone calls, I would have somebody lined up for it, and I will probably have the buy-in from the local authority. So it's just a case of who you know, and just chatting to a few people. So just to elaborate a little bit more on the service providers and care providers, their business model is around care and service. Yeah. So property is not their forte. Yeah, and property development is not their forte. But wanting to grow the business and wanting to service these people and be of service is their business. Yeah. So it's kind of like a nice match, a nice marriage, because for them to grow their business, they need properties. For us to grow our portfolios, if you want to work in this sector, we need service providers or support providers that are ambitious and want to grow in the locations where we want to grow our portfolios.
Yes, I think that was an important. Sorry, Mark, carry on.
Yeah, it's also important to know that it's the care providers that carry the relationships with the local authorities. Yeah, not us as landlords, developers. For a couple of reasons is we don't. I can talk that language, but majority of us can't talk that language. We can talk a different language. yeah, and it took me many years just to get rid of it all, and yeah.
What
Yeah,
language do you mean there?
relationship with
What
the service
language?
provider and the local.
What language do you mean there? Do you mean how to talk?
Well, it's
how do you talk to local? You know, we're builders, developers, landlords. You know, it's how to talk to local government, because they're civil servants, and they're you know, they're a strange bunch.
So when I've spoken to them, that you know, their first answer is protecting the public purse, and that's their job. So a developer that goes and talks to a local authority, they know a developer is probably money driven more than protecting the public purse. So that's number one obstacle, and then it's also then conversations around budgets, rent calculations, how it's all worked out. It's down to the last penny, so it can get a little bit cumbersome at times, but that's where the expertise of the service providers come in, because they've been doing it for years. They can talk that language, and they can offer the service that they say they're going to do.
Can I suggest that all we're trying to do, if we want to go this way, is to find a different tenant, and instead of finding private tenants, all we're doing here is finding a service provider who wants our property as effectively he is a tenant, and I'm thinking of it in that way. I'm not, particularly interested in talking to local government or the local authority or the care provider, if other than to tell the care provider through perhaps somebody like Mark, if I can't contact them directly, that here I am, I've got a well, here is my property, not me. Here is a property. Can you become a tenant and lease it from me and go and do what you want with it? Is that a reasonable way of cutting through this, Mark?
Ultimately, it is, it might be a little bit cold how you explained it, but if you're comparing the care sector to PRS sector from a landlord perspective, yes, it is a shift of tenant. You're going from someone that's signing a 6 or 12-month AST to someone that's signing a 5+ year FRI lease, and doing a different thing with your property rather than renting it out to a worker, stroke someone in the private sector. But effectively, you're not changing the use of the property, you're changing the use of the tenant that you're signing a lease with.
Okay. Shannon, do you want to ask your question, please?
Just go back to Adrian. Adrian, did I answer your question okay?
Yes, mate. I've got a stack of other questions, but I'll let other people get in. So thank you very much.
Okay.
You kind of touched.
Carry on, Shannon.
Hello. You kind of touched on answering my question when you was answering Adrian's. It was more how is it where the need is, and can it be need driven so that we're looking in the right areas? But as you kind of said, is as long as there's a major city or a major town, there's going to be. Are there more needs in certain areas than others, or is it rather than finding a property and finding out whether it's suitable or unsuitable? Is it a case that are the needs? I guess the needs are with different providers in different areas. Am I just talking a load of nonsense here?
No, it makes a lot of sense. Okay, yes, different providers have different needs. So you'll have some providers that will just concentrate on LD, which is learning difficulties, and that's all they do. You have some providers that will concentrate on mental health, and that's all they do. You have some huge providers that have got hundreds and hundreds of millions of pounds on their balance sheet that will have thousands and thousands of staff, and they will have a multitude of services that they can offer. When you get real specific into the type of care that these service providers are offering, they will get quite picky on the location and picky on the specification of the property. So, for example, if you're dealing with severe mental health, that unit will probably want to be just outside of the town centre, but accessible. It'll probably want to be in a semi-rural area where it's a little bit quiet. It'll want to be guarded. It'll want to be protected. It'll want to be the specification will be quite high, And then if you look at the opposite spectrum of the scale, you can look at what we call supported housing, which is quite hands-off support around people that fall on hard times that the local authority support before they go on to major benefits and have to go to a council house. Yeah, and the support providers will give them typically between 3 and 4 hours of support a week around upholding tenancies, budgeting, dental appointments, service appointments, I should say, and that's quite hands-off. Now that need is quite prevalent, yeah, in all the major towns and cities. Yeah, the mental health one, as the one I explained at the other end of the spectrum, is yes, there is a need for it, but they're quite hard to get those because they are specific. Yeah, and you're talking about the next level up from that is hospitalization, and building a hospital is probably not what you guys want to be doing.
No, okay, understood.
Yeah, and right, and then going back to your location, all the major towns and cities, yeah, there are needs. I mean, all you guys have to do is when you're around the towns and cities, just look. You know, I get around the northwest and I see homelessness everywhere. I see drugs and alcohol everywhere. I see domestic violence everywhere. I see anger everywhere. You know, there's problems everywhere. Yeah, and all these people do need a roof over their heads, and they all will be supported in one way or another.
Okay, I'm gonna keep searching for more properties to help. Yeah, good.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's take Chris next, please.
Hi, Mark. Good to see you again.
Hi, and you too. How you doing?
Yeah, very good, very good. You know what? Well, since we spoke at FOMO 3 in Manchester, it did strike a chord, and the conversation keeps cropping up time after time again about assisted living. And while we're looking at properties, we constantly looking what we can do. I think what the key thing here is what everyone wants to understand is the process on what we need to do and who to contact. As Clive said, he seems a bit scared of not knowing what to do if he could do it, but just hand it over so he doesn't have to do the talking. I think a lot of people would go that way because it's difficult to understand that the whole process of doing this. Like you said, it's a very different language. Now, what I found in Coventry, we've become Article 4 recently. So a lot of properties that previously would just get on the market and a few days later go off the market are now just sat there. And it's just ripe for using for assisted living. Now, I think each person would try and pick something that would resonate with them. For example, for myself, I've got an autistic child. So if I can help more autistic children, it would then help me as well to understand her a bit more. So what we're looking at, I mean, we've been told by different people, some prefer big properties, some prefer small properties, as you said, some prefer different spec. So when you would I'm trying to understand the process of what would be the best thing to do as you're looking for properties. Is it best to contact the council and say to them, who do we speak to, and then try and get various different contacts from the small companies to the big ones? So as you're looking at properties, you can specifically match the property to a provider, to a type of tenant, because obviously if you're going to have one that needs a lot of work, then you've got carte blanche, so you could make that property into the spec that they need. So for example, if you've got the ex-druggies, you don't want them using a shared area, you want them separated in studio apartments, for example. Is that the process? How would you do it? Would it be better to get a bigger pool of service providers that you can work with?
Okay, so I'm picking up from here is understanding more about what to do and who to contact, and how to do it. Okay, so I'm just going to bring Shannon in one moment. Shannon, without giving out, with being as confidential as I can, is it okay if I share with the team around what we're working on, and how you did it, because I think because that is something that is real, that has happened, and it's got success, and we're not a million miles away from striking a deal.
No, sure, happy to share.
Okay, right. So met Shannon at FOMO. We connected afterwards, and he presented to me a property in the northeast. Which I had a quick look at on Google Maps. I did a few searches. He gave me an idea of how it could be developed. So I thought, okay, that location-wise type of property and size of it and the layouts that he's suggesting would suit what we call supported housing, which is right at the low scale of support. So I reached out to a couple of people that I know, and a support provider came forward who has got an astonishing track record with the local authority through various care codes that she's been the CEO of previously. And she's really expressed interest. Yeah, she's spoken to the local authority. The local authority have come back and said we support the building, which is really good. Which means that they support their people living there, which means that they will pay the rent to that support provider for these people. So that was really positive. And the next steps now would be for the 3 parties or 4 parties to engage in some form of heads of terms. And then once all that is signed up and rents are agreed and the type of lease that we're going to activate is agreed, then it would be over to Shannon then to get the property purchased and developed, and then as it's coming towards the end, start engaging with the provider and start having it handed over. Does that help, Chris?
Yeah. So I mean, but Shannon bought the property before he went into this, so he did it slightly back to front. What I want to do is make sure that the right I'm purchasing the right property for the right care provider, and knowing that I can do, which is I think what you said. You need to speak to the care provider and find out what they're after, because I mean, one property you could buy and you could end up spending as much as you bought it for to make it fit for purpose. Another one you might only be spending a few £1,000s if it's the low end ones. So yeah, that's great. Fantastic, thank you.
Can I answer?
Okay.
Can I
okay, so let me.
Okay, go on, Mark.
Yeah, Clive is also another example. Yeah, so I've been working with Clive for 6 months or so. And Clive, can I share a little bit?
Yes, exactly. I was going to share it back, to give my example. Really. So shall I do that on this occasion?
Yeah.
I met Mark, as he said, about 6 months ago, and we looked very closely at a property that I ended up having to pull out of, really because there were some hidden structural problems. But I've subsequently found another property which we're working on. I'm working on, and hopefully it'll go through. And it will work as a private residential HMO anyway. But in speaking to Mark, he then made some calls and said, yes, I've got a contractor who would look at this house, and it is for assisted living. And Mark said, well, they've got certain requirements, size of room, they have to be en suite and have to have kitchenettes and things like that. Can you go back to your floor plans, Clive, and double check that it'll work for that? And having had some drawings done with kitchenettes and en suites in, I was able to say, yes, it does work for that. So I'm proceeding on the basis that this house will let as a private rooms HMO, but it's my preference purely for financial reasons. I have to be honest, because I think that it means that I can be hands off with a long-term lease, and that suits me. So I think I think my comment to you, Chris, in particular, is that if you're in a largish town and you find a property, go and find out if somebody wants this property, if it'll work for somebody. And I think it's a bit like using a broker for mortgages. You don't ring up every bank. You go to a broker, and I'm not here selling Mark, although it's clear that this is the sort of thing he does. Eventually, you might well pick up the contacts yourself, like Mark has over the years. You will do, depending on how long you're going to be in this game for. But for me, it's more of, here's a house, here's a property, these are the sort of sizes, this is the sort of location. Does it fit with any of your care providers? Obviously, mine won't fit for high mental health and where they need security and a bit rural, but it'll work for X, and work it that way. I love your people's intentions to help certain areas, and far from me to even suggest they shouldn't do that. But you are making life more difficult if you choose a specific category of tenant. You're going to make it more difficult for yourselves to find a care provider for the property. So is there any, please add anything to that and any details about the property that you want to, Mark?
Okay, thanks, Clive. Thank you. So I think it's might be, I think it's worthy to talk about the type of accommodation, yeah, and really, everything is open and everything is okay to look at, yeah. So when we're looking at properties, yeah, blocks of apartments are a great starting place, yeah. You know, anywhere between 12 and 16 flats in a block, yeah. That type of accommodation is perfect for mental health, yeah, because people suffering from mental health want to live in their own self-contained unit, and then there needs to be some office space put in there, some communal areas. There's a big need for that, and they're quite easy wins, yeah. Anything that is C2 residential. So if you come across any care homes, ex-care homes, residential care homes, and there's a lot of them on the market at the moment. I'm trying to work out why all these elderly care homes are closing down, but there's a lot there on the market. In particular, in the Northwest, if you find any C2 residential care homes in the Northwest, I have 2 or 3 providers that are really keen to do deals on them, and I've been successful lately on a couple of those. You know, and then probably I've always found the easy wins are the ones that have already had the works done. So if you find maybe an auction, or if you find off-market deals where it's already been converted to HMO, or it's already been converted to some flats, yeah, it saves the conversion works, yeah, and you can get in quickly and having some income coming in quickly. So that's the types of accommodation. The layouts is pretty important to understand as well. So there are providers that will take HMOs, right, and HMO shared. And what I mean by shared is where they have shared kitchens and bathrooms, yeah. However, they are difficult. They're difficult to manage for the care provider because there's quite a bit of antisocial behaviour. So if you think you've got a 10-bed shared accommodation, so that means 10 people sharing 2 or 3 bathrooms, 10 people sharing 1 or 2 kitchens, they're in the same place at the same time. You mix that with alcohol and drugs, and domestics go on. You know, it can be difficult. And then local services have brought in police ambulances. And before you know it, there's a marker on the property, and it just becomes a bit difficult. Yeah. So what's progressed from there is where we can provide group living. So there's some shared facilities in there, but then in each unit is pretty much a self-contained studio. Yeah, whereby there's each tenant has their own bathroom and there's a small little kitchenette in there. That is what I would go for as a minimum specification and standard. Yeah, right up to residential C2 care homes. Yeah, and putting different uses in that as opposed to elderly. And there's lots of that stuff around.
Okay, before we come to Clive, the other Clive, just to clarify one thing with what Chris said about his area becoming, one of his areas becoming Article 4. Mm-hmm. Would because there's so much demand for care, are the local authorities able to give licenses to more properties in Article 4 areas for care provision as opposed to private PRS? Do they have that capacity?
Okay. Right. So Article 4 was brought in to stop overdevelopment of C3 to C4 and having multiple people from different families living in one property. Yeah. I understand it, and I understand why local authorities do it and did it. Right. So us as developers and individuals, yeah, we cannot bypass Article 4. Yeah. If you're looking to convert a property and it's in that area, you'll have to go for full planning. However, registered housing providers are exempt from Article 4 and all planning. Yeah. So depending on the property and the need for it, and depending on the appetite of the registered housing provider, you can skip that.
So basically a way to get houses of multiple occupation in Article 4 areas, not for PRS admittedly, but for care providers who are exempt. And I'm terrible with reference numbers. Is that because doesn't become C4, it remains C2?
No, it's because a registered housing provider is deemed by the local authority to adhere to all compliance and all health and safety. So to be a registered housing provider, it's very difficult to be that status. I think you have to have a minimum of 1,000 properties under your belt, and you have to have a serious governance and integrity on your board, and you have to demonstrate years and years of expertise and biographies of the operators, etc. But they are deemed by the local authority to pretty much know what they are doing. Yeah. So they become exempt. They also become exempt from having to have any HMO licenses, and they become exempt from planning as well to a certain extent. So in our situation, and I'll give you a specific one. I was in.
So is that the same? I'm sorry to cut in because it's relevant.
Yeah.
In my example, I would need to apply for a change of use because we're looking at developing a large HMO and it's currently C3. Well, in my example, would I still need to apply for planning?
I think it's a little bit early at the moment because we don't know if there's a registered housing provider involved in yours.
Okay.
We've got a care provider, not an RP.
Understood.
Yeah.
Sorry. Understand the difference now.
Just clarify that difference between a care provider and a registered such and such.
Okay, so you can go to the government website. It's called the Regulator of Social Housing, and it'll give you a list of all the registered housing providers in the UK, and they're all regulated by the Regulator of Social Housing. Yeah, and they have that status. What that means is so. For example, I'm sure all of us have got big housing associations in the locations that we live in. Yeah. So for example, me in Manchester, we've got Regenda Housing, we've got what are the other ones? I can't remember them, but I'm sure I hope you know what I'm talking about here. They are registered housing providers, and a lot of them are offshoots from the local authorities. So decades ago, when the local authorities sold a lot of their council stock, they set up registered housing providers that manage their tens of thousands of stock, and they became registered housing providers. So they were deemed as like the next level down from local authority, So when they're engaged in the deals that we're doing, they will typically present themselves to the local authority with the care provider if need be. And it's not always the same for every deal, but a care provider may engage with a registered housing provider that they work with, and they will team up together and go to the local authority and say, look, this is the property that we're looking to engage with. These are the rent calculations that we're putting forward to the local authority, and the local authority will sit back and say, well, yeah, you're a registered housing provider. We've dealt with you before. You pretty much know what you're doing. We're going to support you.
Yeah, I understand that now. Are they called housing associations?
Yeah, but you can have some companies.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. Okay. So sometimes there's an extra person involved here, because originally when we were talking going to the local authority with and you liaising with a care provider and a local authority, in these situations we have to bring in a housing association, perhaps. Sometimes
it all depends on the relationship that the care provider has with the local authority, and it all depends on that local authority. And just to get technical with you, okay, so the flow of money comes from the DWP, which is central government. Okay, it goes to the local authority, and then it goes to the registered housing provider or the care provider. Now, if it's the care provider that puts the application to the local authority for the rent, that local authority, depending on its status, might only be able to claim 60% of that rent from the DWP. If a registered housing provider made the application, they can claim 100% of it. So that's why in some situations, care providers will team up with a registered housing provider, so there's no financial loss to that local authority. Because if someone is being supported at £300 a week, and the local authority only gets 60% of that from the DWP, they're going to have to put 40% in it from other budgets within their council. Whereas if a registered housing provider did it, they would be able to claim 100% of it. But each local authority has its own jurisdiction over these things, so it can be different. Yeah.
Sorry to keep asking questions, but before I ask Clive, and apologies, Clive, for making you wait, just one point about the Article 4 situation is that if you do find a property and you do make a deal with a care provider and or housing association, and they override the Article 4 because they're not subject to it, if and when your contract with them expires 5, 10, 15 years time, and they choose not to renew it for any reason, you are left with a property in an Article 4 area. Can you comment on that? Is that a risk or?
It's a real good question, and I haven't had experience of it. and I don't know the answer. I think it would fall into some area of planning, yeah, whereby if a property is being used for a certain use for a period of time, it's deemed that use is its use at that time if there's ever a challenge. I think,
understand.
but I'm
Yeah.
not. I think you'd have to speak to a planning consultant just to get clarification on that.
Okay, Clive, Clive, please unmute and ask your question, please.
Hi, can you hear me all right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Great stuff. Somebody's got to ask it. How do you work out where to pitch your rent that you're asking?
Okay, right. So, sorry. Is it just that one question? Sorry.
Yeah, it's just
too soon then.
if you're not getting you're not
No,
having to
you're
deal with
okay, Mark.
bills
You're
or
okay,
voids or
Mark.
anything like that. So yeah, you're not dealing with bills or
Okay,
voids
so
or maintenance. So where do you pitch the rent sort of?
Okay. Are you familiar with local housing allowance?
Yeah.
Okay, so each local authority has a local housing allowance, and there's a government website that you can go to. I can send a link to Clive and you can distribute it, where you put in a postcode, you put in a number of bedrooms or whether it's shared, and it'll tell you what that local housing allowance is. Yeah. Now that would be, so let's say, I know Greater Manchester for one bed accommodation, it's around 170 or 168, but the market rent is about 195. Yeah. So we know the local authorities will support local housing allowance, yeah, and you can probably get a little bit more on top of that, somewhere between 10-20% on top of your local housing allowance. And the reason it's pitched at that is because we have to be competitive with market rent, but maybe we have to be a little bit under it just to show that the local authority is getting a bit of a deal.
Remember, that's per week. That's per week. So if that rate is about £170, and you might get a little bit more, 10%, 20%. So let's say you get £200, which is equivalent to let's call it £800 a month. Well, in my experience with the house I'm looking at, that's damn near close to what I would get as for private tenants. And of course, what I'm saving is the management fees, and I'm saving on the repairs. I'm not talking about if the roof caves in or needs an extension, because that's probably down to the owner of the property. But most repairs, ongoing repairs, will be down to the tenant. Obviously, it's subject to the contract you sign, but it'd be what they call a tenant repairing lease or something. And of course, you don't have any of the management. So my figures suggest that you make at least as much as you would with private tenants and don't have any hassle. Clive, any response to that?
Yeah, we just that sounds very obvious, but I had no idea. So that's helped a lot. Thank you very much.
Sure. Okay, we'll move to the next person. Essay, would you take your camera off and you can come after Daphne, and then we'll come back to Adrian. I think if we're asking questions, then we ought to take the camera off, unless you've got a technical issue there. So Daphne first, then Essay if he's available, and then Adrian, please.
Hi, hi Mark and Clive. So my questions have basically been answered. It's quite a multi-layered sort of process, and I was getting a bit confused with the whole chicken and egg. So do you find a property with a particular need in mind, or do you need to find the other way round, work for a need and then find the right property for it? But anyway, I think that's pretty much been answered. I guess my second question is lending. So obviously it's commercial lending, but is there do certain lenders have an appetite for certain types of care providers, like you were saying, from assisted living? Is their lending more flexible with that than if it was maybe a halfway rehab house? Or I don't know, but it seems to me that they'd do their own in the calculation of the lending, their own risk assessment, and also then depending, I guess, like you said, what is the local housing allowance threshold? Would they take that into consideration rather than the rest? So I'm just wondering how your conversations go with lenders around that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. Hi, Daphne.
Hi.
Okay, so lenders like this sector, yeah. and you're right, it is commercial. So we're not talking to your Birmingham Midshires and places like that. So my experience of it, and this is current, is that the valuer will look at the strength of the covenant and the quality of the building. Yeah. So the stronger the balance sheet of the person or organisation that's signing the lease, and how the lease is structured, will give more credit and value to the building.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So an example there will be if you have an organisation that's been trading for 3 years and maybe it's got £1.5 million on the balance sheet, the value will apply a certain multiplier to that. And in comparison, if you have another provider that's been trading for 25 years, that's got hundreds of millions of pounds on the balance sheet, the value will see them as more credible, will give you a better yield on that value than the other one. Yeah. My experience of it is that they are typically valuing this stuff at the moment on leases of 10 years, anywhere between 8 and 9% yield. Okay. So what they take is the annual rent and they apply a multiplier to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And then your lender will typically lend anywhere between 60 and 70% loan to value against that valuation.
Okay. So you've got a bit of, you're keeping quite a, well, if it's 60%, you're keeping 40% in, and you've had obviously your setup costs, and you might have to do some reconfiguring and etc. So
but Daphne, if you've got £50,000 worth of rents and they value it at 8%, that's 625. It may have only cost you 400 to buy and refurb the property, so you're not leaving money in, because 60% of 625 is ballpark the 400 you've spent.
Yeah.
Chris is nodding there. Am I right, Chris?
Okay.
Amazing returns. I mean, so we found a care provider was doing 7.8% yesterday, which valued at like a ridiculous valuation. It just seems too good to be true.
Yes, 8%. I've been working on 9% for private at the most, and didn't think that it could be any better than that. Obviously, you then become highly geared, but that's get your money out. But that's an investment strategy. It's that the option is there.
Sorry, Chris, if you don't mind me cutting it, how did you find out the provider was offer, or they were matched with a 7.5% yield? Because you're talking to Rick surveyors to give you that information.
Someone I know was speaking to someone that deals with it, and they told him, "Listen, if you we've got the information. We've got the information. We can sell you it for £5,000." But you know what? At that price, it's definitely worth giving them the £5,000. But again, you've got to do due diligence on them. But this is their business. This is what they do. So there's always going to be someone that wants to make money in the process. But if they give you a good start and you get your contacts there, I think it's worth it.
Yeah. Okay. Let's come to Essay. Everyone's going to get a chance. Let's let people who've not asked yet. Couple of questions each, if you want, just so we don't go round and round. Essay.
Hi guys. Hi Mark. Thanks for sharing. I think definitely, actually, 2 questions I was going to ask. I think that's a couple of things that Daphne has asked, and I think Chris has touched on it before as well. But I'm not sure. So I was going to ask about the mortgage. So that's you've covered already. And in terms of, I think that's what Chris was asking as well. What would you suggest to look for a care provider? Then look for the need, ask them their needs, then look for the property, or what's the best suggestion? Or just look for the property, then see what fits.
I would look for the property, and I think that's coming from the experience that I've got, you know, and clearly it's got to be in the right location, yeah. But if you find a property that is in a suitable location, and you know there's a need there because it's in a big town, it's a big city, there's lots of things going on, they might knock it back, yeah, because there's some risk associated with it that we don't know about and that we could never know about. But I'd like to think that if you presented 10 properties in and around big towns and cities of anywhere between 4 and 20 units in each property, I'd generally like to think you'd find homes for 8 of them, 80% success.
Okay, and just a couple of questions arising from that. So let's say you found a property, so you wouldn't advise to go ahead and negotiate and buy the property. You think when you find a property, you should have that discussion. So because one, you're going to know what is the minimum requirement for whatever service is going to be available, or do you just go? I think you gave the minimum standard of at least it's best to be self-contained, have your own toilet and a little kitchenette as well. Is that the minimum standard you say everyone should go by, or do you? Because some provider might depends on what they want to do, what care they're providing. It might be quite specific about how you need to structure the house or how you have to arrange the house. How do you deal with that situation, or you just go with the minimum standard first?
So it all depends on what the need is of the care provider. Yeah. You know, if they want self-contained units with some shared facilities or shared living in there and some office space for a certain type of service that they're running, then that's what they want. And if you want, and it can be completely different with a different service provider. Yeah. I think you've got to try it. Yeah. Find a property and try it and get a feel for it. Yeah. I'll give you an example of something that I had a look at a couple of weeks ago. So about 3 years ago, true HMO shared kind of like fell out the window with supported living because all the antisocial behaviour and it just became really, really difficult for service providers to support people in. So we changed our business model and approach to it, and we went with more self-contained bedsits and studios with some shared facilities in there, and we've been rolling that model out for years. And then I looked at a building a couple of weeks ago, just outside of Manchester in Ashton, and it was all shared facilities. So there was 9 rooms in there, a couple of bathrooms, a couple of kitchens, and I just thought, oh, what am I going to do with it? And I mentioned it to one of the care providers work, which goes, I'll snatch your hand off. So the rent's not as high as self-contained because you're getting the shared LHA rate, but the need is there. Yeah, she clearly has a need for that accommodation for a certain type of cohort of people.
I think I got one more question, but I think he's escaped me now anyway. But thank you very much. Thanks for that.
Okay.
Pleasure.
Yeah, Rachel, please unmute.
I think most of the questions that I did have been largely answered. I think, like Clive, I'm looking to move some of my properties, come away from tenanted traditional tenancy agreements because I really can't be bothered with the tenants anymore directly. And so I'd like to move into perhaps providing supported housing with like social housing and things like that. And I just wondered what, we talked about sort of in bigger properties like 14 to 16 sort of self-contained and things like that. But if you were just offering sort of like a house then that had say 3-4 bedrooms and things like that, a HMO potentially, what is there any sort of guidelines on how many bedrooms they would take, or is there like a minimum for social housing, and also do you need to actually get a HMO on the property first if you're going to lease the whole property to like social housing or whatever?
Wait, hi, Rachel, by the way. Hello.
Hi.
Thank you for joining, by the way.
Sorry, I'm in Swansea in South Wales.
Okay, lovely. I'm in the city of Manchester. When you say a HMO on a property, do you mean a license?
Yes, a HMO license.
Okay, right. You've just mentioned something there that I've not talked about yet, and these are just standard typical houses. Yeah. So if we come across a 2 up, 2 down terrace, yeah, or a 3-bed semi, or a 3-bedroom terrace, yeah, don't discount them. There's a need for it, yeah, because families will live in there that need support.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. So there may be a provider that will lease that property off you. Talk to the local authority and say, I've got a 3-bedroom terrace property in Swansea. Do you have a need for it? And I'll say, yes, we certainly have a need for it. Right, we'll give you this amount of rent, and that provider may sign a 3, 5, 7, 10-year lease with you. Yeah, and you won't have to do you won't have to do a change of use on it, and you won't have to change the configuration of it. So the bedrooms can remain where they are, the kitchen and bathroom can remain where they are. The specification might need to be upgraded because the provider will have a spec that they will expect the property to be handed over to them. So they'll expect everything's got to be in working order. Everything's got to be clean and new. So new carpets, new paint decor. They'll want at least 10, 15 years of life left on the roof. The electrics will need to be up to standard. The gas boilers will be up to standard. The windows, no damp, etc., etc. And so yeah, don't discount your standard housing or houses. They can be quite quick wins, and you can find some pretty nice deals on those, and you can get into them.
I think it's
quickly.
just we've got one or two of them that we've just finished refurbing now. We've taken back from tenants. I've just done a full gut job on them and are ready to sort of do something with them. But I'm loath to put them back to a normal tenancy because of the risks and the issues that you can face. So ideally something like that. And we've just seen a lot online. We've actually just bombarded constantly with people offering deals on if you invest 15,000 you'll get 23,000 back over the next 3 years for investing in supported housing and things. So, and I haven't delved into that, but what I would like to do is obviously own the properties myself and offer that kind of thing. But I didn't know really, because I haven't touched base with like local authorities and things yet, of how much realistically it's going to be able to achieve in rent in comparison to that on the private sector.
So where are those houses? Swansea.
Yeah, they are. Yeah.
Yeah, and those are the ones that you've just recently refurbished.
Yes.
If you want to pick up with me tomorrow, or offline, or directly, just give me some pictures of them and locations, and I'll see, and I'll talk to some providers over there and see if there's a need for it.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, with pleasure. And then you mentioned something about houses and HMOs.
Yeah, so because we're looking at properties at the moment that have already got a HMO license on them, they could be 5-bedroom, with a HMO license on it already, and we're looking at acquiring those properties for this sort of need. So I just wondered, they've obviously got the HMO license on them. One of the property that I do have now, which is at the end of the refurb, doesn't have a HMO license, and I just wondered, do we need? If we did a refurb on a property that doesn't have a HMO license, would we actually need to get the HMO license on it first before we could offer it to live in or whatever?
Okay, there is a little bit of risk in it, but I wouldn't be too concerned about getting a HMO license if you are looking to put into social housing. Right. But I would certainly, before you invest any money and buy something, just have that checked out and have all your ducks lined up before you put money into it.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's not a big ask to do. It's quite easy and straightforward. Yeah, as long as the need is there. So, for example, if you're looking at buying a HMO property or a property that could be converted to HMO, but doesn't have a license, or is a HMO that doesn't have a license but you need it, then engage with me, and I'll engage with a care provider. They will engage with local authority and say, look, we're looking to take this building on. It doesn't have a HMO license, but we're a registered housing provider. We'll take care of it. Yeah, and the local authority support it, then there's no need for you to get involved or worry about it.
Right, that's it. Perfect. Great. Thank you.
No problem.
Thank you, Rachel. Thank you. I'm muting you. Okay. David, please unmute.
Thanks, Clive. Good evening, Mark. Thank you very much for your time this evening. I found it really interesting. I've been in and out of this space for about 15 years. And a lot of the questions everybody has asked have been great questions. What I wanted to ask you is a bit cheeky, actually. You're up in Manchester way. Is that your kind of geographical area? And you mentioned that you have got 9 homes supporting 16 to 18-year-olds. So is that just your area geography-wise, like the Manchester area? Is that your patch, or do you operate around the country? It's a leading question, by the way, Mark.
I know. I'm trying to work out what's cheeky.
I haven't got there
yet. Okay. Nice to meet you, David.
Yeah, you too.
Good to know you've been in and out of the sector for a while. Have you enjoyed it?
Yeah, I'm over in the east. I have. I work with a charity, and I gave them a property a few years ago, and they were housing 16 to 18-year-olds that had come from institutional care. Yeah. And I was invited to their stakeholder day. And it was really moving. They had 3 or 4, I was going to say children, but they're in their early 20s, who they'd helped. My understanding was with children in institutional care for whatever reason, when they get to 16, a chunk of money disappears from the government, and then there's a space there to try and help them. I went to this open day, and they had these 4 people on stage, and it was like, this is what life was like before I met
Yeah.
and this is what happened. And now I'm 22 and I've got my degree in apprenticeship, and it was really touching.
Good outcome.
So that was good. My daughter lives in Manchester, has graduated last year. And this is the cheeky question. And she's been working for an organisation with exactly the same thing, helping teenagers with learning disabilities. She's had a bit of an issue, and she's looking for other opportunities. But she's passionate about it, and has graduated with a degree in educational psychology, and that's her bigger career path. So I don't know the name of the organization, but that's me being cheeky. And then the other thing is, I've got a property at the moment which would be ideal potentially, but it's down my neck of the woods in Cambridgeshire. For potential supported living, and it could be an HMO. It's got a attached separate annex with its own facility kitchen, which to me would lean towards somebody who maybe needed full-time care, but the staff would need a place which is separate but connected and have their own independent space and have a room and office and all of that. And I didn't know if that's me being cheeky again, if this area of the country is of interest, or you have guidance.
Okay, right. So my care homes are all in the northwest. Yeah, Wirral, Manchester, Blackpool, Burnley, all in those areas. Yeah. What's the charity called that you work with, that you give a property to?
Over in Norwich, they're called Break.
I've not heard of them. And who's your daughter working for?
I've WhatsApped her to ask, and she hasn't responded me yet. But she's had
the fact that
I can find out.
Okay. And is she working in care or management?
She's been working in care, so she has been going in. So she's a supported care worker. She would stay overnight sometimes, and she'd be, the clients.
100% be interested in talking to her. We are recruiting at the moment, and there's a shortage of good staff.
Yeah, well, great.
Okay, and she lives in Manchester, yeah.
She lives in Swinton. We just she's just permanently moved up there. Salford.
I grew up there.
Well, she
was born.
And we wanted to get her on the property ladder. So anyway, she doesn't appreciate it, but she's now got an HMO and she's living, and we've got it tenanted for her. So she's experiencing the benefit of property.
Love it. Okay, with that property you got there in Cambridgeshire, yeah. If you are struggling, or if you need any support with it in relation to a care provider, yeah, just reach out to me.
Awesome. And then Clive, you'll provide how we can connect, will you? Or?
I will do. Yeah, I'll do. Yeah, that'll all be provided tomorrow. Yeah.
Thank you for letting me be cheeky, and thanks for your time.
Okay.
Love
it. Judith, please.
Hello, Clive. Thank you for organizing this. This is incredibly interesting. And I think especially because being in London, it's very difficult to find properties that work, and and don't need too much management. So Mark, very, very happy to meet you. Very nice to meet you.
You too.
Sounds like it would be a perfect model for me. What I was wondering is, so further on south, as you said, Cambridge might work. What about Luton, Bedford, Peterborough, that sort of area?
Yeah, very much so. Quite dense, a lot of people, a lot of need.
Okay, that probably will also be the case for London, but it's just hard to find cheap properties.
Yeah, I've never had success in London.
Not because of the care providers, just because of finding the properties?
Connections. There's a lot of support there, and there's a lot of supported housing there. I nearly did a huge deal there, but it never came off. But I've got friends that have done lots and lots of deals in London. It just hasn't come off for me. But it did work, and what worked, the model that worked there was 3-4 bed houses being converted into, let's call them HMOs. Each room had its own ensuite, and then they were shared HMOs, but the rents down there were like £300 a week per room. So they were about £300 a week per room. LHA rents, yeah, they were double what they are in Manchester. So the numbers stacked up, and it worked. So you can find them, but I think you really got to be really connected to make it work in London. You've got to find a property really at the right price. I think you have to have a bit of collateral in respect of, you have to have some quite high numbers in there to maybe we were looking at portfolios of 22 houses and more. So I think that gets people's attention when you go talking to local authorities.
I
Yeah.
see. So the odd house wouldn't work then for a local authority. They couldn't be bothered, basically.
Yeah, I just got a feeling that, you know, if you have, they're so busy and they're so dense, you know, and if you turn up to a local, or a provider turn up to a local authority and say, hey, look, I've got 50 properties here and there's 150 bed spaces in here, it's going to get their attention more than someone turning up with just one property with 4 rooms in it.
Mhm. Will,
Yeah, but it's not to say it won't work though.
Will you be at the FOMO Northwest next Tuesday?
I'm not invited. Clive might have
It's
left.
not FOMO. It's not FOMO. It's not FOMO. It's the It's the networking meeting, and I did tell you about it a few months ago. But yeah, I'll remind you about it. That's the one in Manchester, I presume, Judith.
Yes.
Manchester Northwest at Worsley Old Hall. On Tuesday.
Great location.
Yeah, yeah. So I'll mention it to you, but again, yeah.
Okay.
It would be lovely to talk to you in person. And you know, I would come up. Well, I think that's all really great. So I hope that I can have a few contacts with Clive, and thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Judith. Chris, please.
Yeah, but just to let you know, FOMO, the next FOMO mark is in Winchester.
Yeah.
Winchester, that's Crewway, Cheshire, isn't it?
No, South Coast.
Oh.
As in the
Right, when's that?
I will pick you up on the way. So just a quick one. It wraps up with Judith's one. So if there's someone that lives in London and wants to purchase properties in Manchester, do you know any care providers up there that could help them out? So if Judith wanted to buy a property in Manchester, could she then come and speak to you to help her out? Would that be like a partnership that would work?
Of course.
And how would that work? So, for example, you've potentially got 15 people on here. And instead of looking in their own town, we have got an expert on here that works in Manchester that needs as many properties as we can throw at him and has got all the contacts. So if we all wanted to come to you and invest in Manchester, because you're the expert, and it would be much better, much quicker, although there might not be as much profit in it, potentially you would still make the money you need to because you've got the contacts and there's no messing around, it's straight in. How would that work?
So
help people, sorry, it wasn't set up.
Okay. Right. I do not have the capacity to source properties at the level that you guys may want to grow your own businesses. Yeah. But I do have the capacity to put the deals together and put leases in place and put all the stakeholders in place. Yeah. And this is work with Clive and Shannon, if you guys source the property, then I'm more than happy to jump in once you've sourced the property and put everything together for you. Yeah. You don't have to buy it. Yeah. Just maybe express an interest in it with the seller, whether it's off market or on market. It doesn't happen quickly, by the way. Shannon knows it can take weeks to get an answer. Yeah. So you guys would have to keep the vendor or the estate agents on ice. Yeah. But that would be a match. Yeah, that would work.
Yeah, weeks is quick. As long as you're not saying 10 months, 8 weeks, really quick. Yeah, that's what I meant. I mean, obviously we want to pick our own properties and source, because that's what we do. It's just once we've got the properties, if we can go to you then and say to you, we've got this property, what do you think, how many years do you think we'll get for this on a type of lease, and your professional opinion, then we can say, right, it might work, give us some more idea, and then right, let's buy it, let's get working on it. That's perfect.
I'd love to. Anywhere in Greater Manchester, we can put a contract stroke lease on it. The need is that big, yeah. So that's all in Greater Manchester. We have what's known as a GMCA, which is the Greater Manchester Combined Authorities, 10 local authorities within Greater Manchester. Yeah, there's lots and lots of stuff to look at. To give you guys any heads up, stay away from the affluent areas like Trafford, Stockport. Those areas, aim for places like Oldham, Rochdale, Wigan, Bolton, Bury, Tameside.
I know someone who's got some properties in Oldham.
Okay. There's just to give you some latest info as well. I've got a care provider that will take 2 to 4 C2 residential camps from me. Yeah. So they've got the C2 planning. Yeah. So these
Just
are.
repeat that, Mark. Would you just repeat that, Mark? You've latest information.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So I've got a care provider that is looking for 2 to 4 residential care homes. Yeah. And must have C2 planning. Yeah. Currently. So what these typically will be elderly residential care homes that are closed down. Yeah. That our care provider can go in. We can do a quick remodel of it. They'll talk to local authority. They'll get the support, and they're looking for Rochdale. They're looking for Rochdale, North Wales. Yeah, so that's outside of the northwest, and pretty much anywhere within Greater Manchester. Okay, and those units can be anywhere between 12 and 18, 20 flats in each or unit in each building.
Okay. Are there any more questions? Everyone will get a recording tomorrow, hopefully. I just noticed halfway through that it said it was recording, but said something strange about whether it was capturing the audio. So I hope it has. But anyway, you've all been here anyway. So I will share contact details as well. That's usually provided by way of somebody doing a PowerPoint with their details on it. But in this case, Mark hasn't done that, so I will provide details. Just to actually jump in with a couple of questions. Leasehold, does that make a difference if the property is leasehold, Mark? Other than getting the leaseholder's permission to use it for the purpose? And is there a problem with break clauses if there's a long contract?
Okay. So first leasehold. So we're talking the difference between leasehold and freehold. Yeah. I very rarely come across leasehold properties that will have a restriction in respect of the type of people that are going to be living there, because you get into a very, very sticky situation if freeholders start putting things like that on there. Yeah. The nearest thing that I have seen to it is restrictions on betting shops, promiscuous services, and off licenses. Yeah. It's worthy just to mention now regarding lending on leasehold properties. Obviously, you guys know that banks don't like anything if there's less than 125 years left on leasehold properties. Yeah, they like to have a bit of longevity in it. But answer to your question, not a problem regarding the title of the property. And break clauses. For
So
you guys,
if you have break clauses, it values it down a bit for some reason, or up. I can't remember which way around.
Down.
Yeah.
You guys, I mean, there can be different views on this, and values do take different views on it, because if the building is such a great building, such a great location, then a valuer may think, you know what, you do want a break clause, because if the incumbent comes into difficulties, you've got a break clause to get them out and put a better tenant in. That is one side of the argument. But I think in what we're looking at here, in the locations that we're looking at, is you don't really want a break clause. Yeah. I've done a deal recently on 16 beds up in Preston. That was a 10-year lease with no break clauses. Lenders, to get some nice deals from lenders, you want to be looking at 10 years as a minimum. That's what they really, really like.
Excellent. So sorry to jump in with a couple of questions after sort of appearing to wind it up, but I will wind it up now. And thank Mark very much for his appearance tonight, his contribution tonight. Thank you.
All right, just go a quick question. There's time for it.
Yes, who's that?
Let's see.
Oh yes, go ahead.
Oh, hi, Mark. Just a quick one. I live in Eccles, so is that area okay? Because I think Chris, Clive might know about this, because there's a property I was looking up was in my house before, but because my area is Article 4, so I was looking at it for HMO previously, but after hearing what you just said now, I think the vendors or the owners are quite keen to sell. So is there something that could be done? It's like it's got almost 4 free rooms downstairs and a 3-bedroom upstairs. So would this area Eccles be okay, even though this area is go Article 4, but is there something that could be done? I could speak to you privately if you think there's opportunity, then we could kind of I could speak to the vendor again, because they contacted me directly when they knew I was initially interested. But when I first saw it was Article 4, so I told them I wasn't interested anymore. But if there's something that could be done for in terms of the care and things like that, then I could kind of approach them again, because they took it off the market because they were struggling, and they want to relocate to Wales because they want to move their parents close to them. So they got a need to sell. So yeah.
So Eccles is Salford local authority.
Yeah.
Yep. Jump all over it.
Okay, I'll probably speak to you then about it, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Similar to what Chris was saying, something along that line. So probably get a deal together and speak to you and see how to structure or speak to the right people.
Sure. I've got a care provider that's chomping at the bits for Salford, and she has an amazing relationship with Salford Council.
Okay.
Yeah, and she's growing and growing and growing.
Oh, it's fine. I'll contact you.
Okay,
Yeah.
let's leave it there. It's 9 o'clock. So thank you again, Mark. I'll speak to you soon.
Pleasure, guys. My utmost pleasure, gratitude. Yeah.
Enjoy the football tomorrow night. Okay.
Thank you very much, Clive.
Sunday.
Fantastic.
Sorry,
Thank you very
weekend.
much for setting us up.
The
Thank you,
weekend.
Clive.
See ya. Bye.
Thank you
See you
all.
guys.
Thank you.
To everyone.
Ciao.
David,
Bye-bye.
are you still on, David?
Yes,
Are you Norfolk based then? Are you a fellow Norfolkian?
I haven't got 6 fingers, Shannon. No.
Nor have I. But I do reside in Norfolk. The fact that you said your property was in Norwich, I didn't know if you are still based there or were based there.
I've got properties Cambridgeshire. I have got properties
Yes.
and Suffolk. So yeah, but you're not a million miles away. I know the A14 and A11 very well.
Okay, very good, very good.
We should connect. I don't know how.
Yes, I'm in Norfolk myself. I'm somewhere between Norfolk and Norwich and Bedford.
Okay, I've got a property in Watton.
Pardon? You've got a property in Watton, so have I. Actually, small world.
See ya.
Thank you for that.